We begin where we left off last week, and I'll run quickly through the slides very quickly to just bring everybody up to speed. We're talking about the most accurate forecast, and of course that's the Bible, but I don't know if we really have an understanding of just how precise the Bible is. Long before it ever happened, it was predicted in the book of Zechariah, Old Testament, long before we even come to this era of the end times, which began when Jesus was crucified and was resurrected. We've been literally in the end times since Acts chapter 2. But we're at the end of the end times now. I don't know whether we have any way to really understand just how precise. So long before, in Zechariah chapter 12, verse 1, the burden of the word of the Lord for Israel, saith the Lord, which strengtheneth forth, which stretcheth forth the heavens, and layeth the foundation of the earth, and formeth the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all people round about. Now, when that was said, there was no way for that one city to go global with that. Now, we don't even give any consideration. We obviously understand how one city in the world can upset the entire world, just as God predicted that it would. So he made Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all people round about, when they shall be in siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. That could make no sense to the people who first heard that. That could make no sense to the disciples as they would read the book of Zechariah. How's God going to do that? How's the whole world going to be gathered against Jerusalem? And now, it's an easy thing for us to understand. Simple as can be. Verse 9 and 10. And these verses make no sense. They're gibberish unless you understand the Trinity. Look what it says. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. And I will pour upon the house of David, upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the spirit of grace and of supplications. Now watch this. Now who's speaking? God. God's speaking. And they shall look upon me, whom they pierced. God says, they pierced me. They shall look upon me whom they pierced. This will blow your mind even more. And they shall mourn for him. I thought he was talking about himself. Well, he is, if you understand the Trinity. And they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for, and there's a trigger phrase, his only son. And shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. Yeah. That firstborn thing is a big deal. It was in that story of the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. Isaac was called his firstborn, only he wasn't. He wasn't his firstborn. But he was his firstborn in the prophetic sense. He was the one that was from the promise of the Father, just like Jesus was. Okay, so most accurate forecast. Going to try to move quickly. I just love this because Haller's put this in the form of an acronym, an acrostic, an acrostic, ACLU. That's what we've been doing for the last 3.5 years when all this has come together. Acceleration, convergence, logistics, and understanding. And I take this kind of and apply it to Daniel chapter 12:8, and I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed to the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried. But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. But the wise shall understand. Now, we are wise not because we're so smart, but because these things are coming into focus right before us. And so we understand. There's a passage in 1 Chronicles chapter 12 that kind of correlates with this. And of the children of Issachar, which were men that had understanding of the times, to know what Israel ought to do. We need to be men of Issachar, men who understand their times and know what ought to be done. Indeed, but I would say that in this room right here, you have more understanding of what needs to be done than in the entirety of the White House and Congress and the judiciary. You have better understanding of what ought to be done. And in Matthew 24:15, Jesus addressed this as well. He rebuked the religious leaders in talking to the disciples in Matthew 24. It's a great chapter about his longest speech about the end times. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. You want to understand? Read the Bible. So, then there's a lot to be said about that, but we need to move on. So we talked about 3 different things that need to be discerned to understand your time. The truth, 1 Corinthians 2:14. The times, Matthew 16:3. Jesus said the religious leaders, they don't know what time it is. And then discerning the spirits. Wow, those are the days we're living. You need to discern the spirits. 1 Corinthians 12:10. These things can be discerned. The Holy Spirit will give you understanding if you seek it. So here's a quote worth requoting. Jimmy Evans, if you don't follow him on prophecy on the web, he's a good guy to follow. You're not in the end times because you have signs. Okay? You're not in the end times because you have signs. You're in the end times because you have all the signs. That's where we are. That's what's different from years gone by. We've got everything. That's what we're going to talk about tonight is the everything. And this is kind of where we ended up talking about all these different things that have been accelerating. The ACLU, these things are accelerating. They were happening for decades a little bit, but they have happened at such an accelerated pace, just as Jesus said they would. He said these end times are going to be like a woman gone into labor. They're going to be more intense pains, and they're going to come quicker, the acceleration factor. So the rise of the one world everything, artificial intelligence, robotics, transhumanism, and we've got still a lot to say about that because it's happening all the time. But when we think about all of these things coming together, we can see in the Tower of Babel what the intention is. What's the intention of the devil in these things happening the way that they are? Well, let's go back to the Tower of Babel and let's just read what they said they were going to do. Now, the Tower of Babel was run by a rebel. And that rebel, named Nimrod, was bringing about a worldwide rebellion against God. That's a template of what we're seeing come together now. So, Tower of Babel, Genesis 11:3, and they said one to another, go to, let us make brick. I remember the first time I read this, and I thought, brick instead of stone. They're both hard. But brick does not last like stone. More importantly, stone is God-made. Brick is man-made. And then they said, let us build us a city. as a general rule, cities are bad places. The only city spoken well of is Jerusalem, the city of God. But all the other cities are places where prostitution and thievery and all kinds of bad stuff, because people are conglomerated. And America has always had large cities, but nothing like what we have today. America used to be, up until, well, about the time I got out of farming, late 70s, it was becoming evident that the government had somebody in the government, because the government regulations were coming fast and furious, what they wanted to do was they wanted to get more acres in the hands of fewer people. Now, we saw that back in the 70s and tried to fight it, like tilting at a windmill, spitting into the wind. But we saw that's what they were trying to do. Why would they do that? Control. It's easier to control 1,000 people than it is 1,000,000. And they've done it. Farmers can't even plant today if the GPS goes down. So let us build a city. They wanted to build a city because of all the bad things they knew could bring to pass in cities, whose top may reach to heaven. So we have some motivation here. They wanted the realm of God. Everything about this is Antichrist. Everything. And let us make a name. I identify as whatever today. Not what God made me. Let us make a name. We'll call ourselves what we think we are. We'll decide who we are. We're no longer going to be the descendants of Ham, Shem, and Japheth, the way God set this all up. We're going to be who we decide we're going to be. Does that sound like our times? Lest we be scattered abroad. That is, of course, the mandate that God gave to Noah and his sons when they came out of the ark, was to go forth and control the world. They were to go forth and subdue the world. Same thing that was given to Adam, but now Ham, Shem, and Japheth are going to go forth, and now these people at the Tower of Babel, they don't want to be scattered. So you can see bits and pieces all over. We've got a World Health Organization. We've got a United Nations. Now, all these things sound great. They're just anti-God. Now, I know that's a narrow way of thinking, but God said what he said, and the world is coming back together, and not necessarily shoulder to shoulder, but with technology, we're connected to the whole world. And so we've got this redefining of what it means to be human. We are all already in that process. It has been for decades now with heart implants and hearing aids and bolts in our ankles, and I guess they'd be screws. I guess you could have a bolt. All of these things, we're able to make better. The $6 billion man concept. We're able to enhance humanity. It was flawed the way God did it. We'll make it better. Right? That's what the $6 million man was supposed to be. Better, stronger, super hearing. Right? So if I take my hearing aids out, I can't hear what you say, and that's kind of nice sometimes, but I can put these hearing aids in and I know what you said. I heard you. And on. Why, there's so many things. The apostasy of the church. Months ago, we talked about that. We'll talk about that more because it keeps shaping up. We talked a couple of weeks ago about IHOP and the new apostolic reformation. These people are messed up. And they are a part of the reason why the anti-Semitism, we'll talk about that in a moment, is going on. So here's where we pick it back up. We're into the brave new world. Mind manipulation. It is already ongoing. Your mind has already been manipulated into believing some things that aren't so. You know, that's what Ronald Reagan said about a liberal. Problem isn't what they know, it's that they know so much that ain't so. Right? So you've already, you don't even know it, but you've already been lulled into believing some things, probably acting on that. What has been burned into your brain for decades, that's just not true. So let's go here and listen up.
March 16th, 2018. The U.S. government's Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, commonly known as DARPA, announces a bold initiative to develop what they call next generation non-surgical neurotechnology. It is designed to allow the human brain to directly interface with machine.
For those of you listening to this on the web tomorrow, I'm not going to be able to reproduce this. You're going to have to hear it here. Otherwise, this is from the History Channel, and YouTube will ding us for copyright. So you're going to have to hear it here. But you can go find it, YouTube, History Channel, America's Book of Secrets, DARPA's Secret Mind Control Technology, Season 4. This has been ongoing for quite a while. I'm going to zip along to where I want you to begin to pick it up. About 4 minutes.
But as concerning as that may be, according to some scientists, a more permanent kind of mind control technology is looming. And it involves modifying the human brain by altering the human body's DNA.
The future of mind control, and the future being right now because these experiments are being done, is using gene editing tools. One of them would be CRISPR. The way it works is take the CRISPR, which are these short alternating repeats of DNA. You put that together with an enzyme called Cas. And so you take the CRISPR that you want to use, and you put these pieces together that can be injected and insert this DNA to certain areas of the brain so that we can change brain cells and turn them into something you wouldn't otherwise be. So in this way, gene editing technologies like CRISPR really form a definite basis for future mind control.
These are things that DARPA has investigated. Every technology has potential for good or evil. And who defines what's good and what's evil, and who uses it for what purpose? These are all questions that have been asked about everything from rockets to self-driving vehicles. We still don't have a good handle on the ethics of various technologies that we use. The technologists tend not to be so concerned with the ethics. That seems to be the domain of other people, policymakers, for example, academics, people like this. There needs to be a hand-to-hand interaction with people creating technology and those who are considering the ethics of that technology.
But there won't be. Technology is moving far faster than we can bring the rules around to it. There won't be any rules. There used to be an old saying, the old folks would say, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Now, that's a true maxim in your life. Just because you can do something, you've probably told your kids that. It's a good maxim, but it's not one that our world is going to live by. If we can think to do it, they're going to figure out a way to try to do it. And if they can, they will do it. So CRISPR, think of it as a pair of scissors. And this is actually old news, where they can take DNA, they can, with a pair of scissors, cut out a chunk of it and insert what they want it to be. DNA is language. And tell your cells what to do. And they have been pushing it at us for decades now, literally, been able to do that splicing for more than a decade for our benefit. You know, there's things in your DNA that's going to cause you to have bad things when you get older. We can fix that now. We can make you better. So this is kind of old news, but we're now able to do it in such a way. There was the conspiracy theory going around during COVID that the big V, I don't want to say the word because YouTube might take us down or ding us. The big V, they were injecting things into our bodies that were going to be used for mind control. And that's a conspiracy theory. But what's not a theory is they were experimenting. The things that were being injected were for the purpose of experimentation, see what they could do. So we're not there yet, but that's where they're taking us. And they intend to. And it will not be good. Any thoughts about mind control before we move on? I'll show you in just a moment how you've already been manipulated. But this ties right into 2 Thessalonians 2:9, that is a clear prophecy about what the Antichrist is going to do. The man of sin, even him, 2 Thessalonians 2:9, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. So all of these things, robotics, AI, all of that, is going to cause the Antichrist through his man, Satan through his man, the Antichrist, to be able to have godlike powers. They're going to appear godlike. Artificial intelligence, and we talked a little about this before, artificial intelligence is not what everybody thinks it is. It is just fast, massive computing. And in ways it can do it in such a way that you think, wow, that's really smart. No, it's just really blazing fast, massive amounts of information to draw from. AI is able to do things that appear that only a human could do. I heard some lame brain say today that there's no reason why artificial intelligence can't do all the capabilities that a human brain can do. Well, I would argue with you that's a stupid statement. First of all, artificial intelligence is not acting on its own. It's acting on what a program told it to do. I mean, we've talked about this. They've made Google almost useless. I mean, you've got to really know how to search for what you're searching for, or you're going to get what they want you to have. I mean, this has been a problem for over probably 2 years now for me. You have to be very creative to do the search and in ways to get around it. Otherwise, all you're going to get is their garbage. So artificial intelligence is going to spew forth whatever its program has told it to do. Maybe really fast, maybe really impressive, but it's not intelligent. Verse 10, with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. It's an odd thing that I would even say, I would even read, or we would talk about that somebody wouldn't love the truth. How would you not love the truth? Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit more in just a moment about this manipulation, but the love of the truth, well, there's an anti-universe going on out there. College campuses saying ridiculously silly things. We've got Congress persons, I don't know whether they identify still today as a woman or not, Congress persons saying intifada. Do you know what intifada means? They don't. It means using all means of terror and blood to kill and move things in the direction you want. Terrorism. Used to be an ugly word. Now, so they use the word intifada, and they don't even know what that means or understand the implications of it. The kids on the college campus. From the river to the sea. No, I wouldn't. I'd love to be able to do it if it didn't cost me any money or time or effort. I'd love to ask those kids, what river is that? What sea are you talking about? Now, they might get the sea, they never get the river. Mindless, they don't even know what they're saying.
But isn't that part of the problem? We're looking at them as kids. They're technically adults, wanting to behave like adults, but they're still acting like moronic children, which is all children are lacking
Yeah.
the.
That's why we don't let 18-year-olds vote. We just let them fight in wars because they'll do what they're told, properly motivated. But we don't want them to vote because it requires, boy, this is really dating me, isn't it? It requires thinking to vote where it used to. Here we go. Overpopulation. Problem? There are approximately 7.1 billion people in the world. That's a lot of people, but to put the number in perspective, there are about 7.5 trillion square feet of land in the state of Texas. This means that theoretically every person in the world could fit in the state of Texas, and each person would have 1,056 square feet of living space, 4,200 square feet for a family of 4. One might say the problem is not the number of people, but rather a lack of resources. And that really is, that nails it. Overpopulation is not even close to the problem. But you thought it was, right? You've been told that for decades and decades. It's been burned into your brains. I remember sitting at Warrensburg at university, listening to a lecture from a professor. Sounded like he knew what he was talking about. And he went through, this is 1972. And he was talking about all of the things about the population of the world and the starvation and the water problems. And we had 10 years. Or so. A long so. So the perspective on things matters. Those who love the truth. Now, there are people that would come from a college campus who would hear me say this, and they would be triggered by that because they don't love the truth. They want their own truth, kind of like the Tower of Babel. Surveillance, we haven't got time to talk about that tonight. Do you know who's watching? Do you know what they know about you? From your phone to Madam A, as I like to call her, Alexa. Your car, if it's a smart car, and most of them are now. I remember driving down the road, coming past the lake going home, and I changed lanes. There's nobody anywhere in sight. And I changed lanes without using my turn signal, which is unusual for me. Because I consider it an insult if you change lanes in front of me and you don't use your turn signal. At any rate, I digress. And Judy, that woman God gave me, Judy said, you better be careful or our insurance is going to go up. And I said, well, they don't know I didn't use my... Oh, yeah, this thing is connected. Conceivably, they might know more than they're supposed to.
How fast you going to?
You know, there's an area in which I disagree with almost everybody. I'm going to put it out there just to give you something to chew on. There are places where artificial intelligence and robotics already make our life wonderful, and I'm longing for the day when we have self-driving cars and everybody has to have one. You don't get a choice in the matter. Because you will not get mad at me for driving 4 miles over the speed limit, like they do now. Like some of you would get mad if you were behind me now. Not them, not when everybody has a self-driving car. They will all go the speed limit. They will also not bump into each other. Already, Judy's car and my car has radar in such a way. I love doing this because it just puts Judy on edge. I turn the button on, take my hands off the wheel, and take a snooze. My cruise control's on. My radar will not let me. It does a better job of keeping me from running into somebody than I do. It does a better job than I do. Because I'm all the time being distracted. That car never is. That car doesn't get mad at the car in front. That car doesn't want to do something willful like I do. That guy's car is self-driving, so it'll never cut me off. Or if it does, my car will be okay with that. Do you begin to see what I'm talking about? In many ways, robotics and artificial intelligence are wonderful. Now, I know you, everyone to a person, disagree with me. We're going to have to quit here and we'll pick it up next week. These last two, the implications for the church and what we should decouple from, are two things that are most important that we're not thinking through yet. And we better start. What are the implications for survival as a church? Should we be on YouTube? Should we be on Facebook? Should we be telling the whole world how we feel about abortion and Israel and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Should we be on YouTube where there's the evidence for the government to know what we feel about LGBTQ, et cetera? You begin to see what I'm talking about? Is it smart? I think we may have already reached the point where we probably ought to be stopping it. Because they'll use that someday to hunt us. And then what should we decouple from? There are some of you who could not sit through this Bible study without checking Facebook or your email or your text messages. Am I lying or am I crying? Nobody will admit to it. We get so mapped in our brain with these things, they become habits. Habits. Bad habits are easier to get into than good habits. Why is that? Why is it easier to get into a bad habit than it is to get into a good habit? You know, Judy and I were sitting in the chateau on the lake, acting like we were rich folk. And we were debating where we would worship on the Lord's Day. And the temptation discussion came around. You know, we could just sit here in bed and watch Coventry on YouTube, live. We're in church. And that's nothing but lazy. That's the lazy way to do it. And not good at all. I actually had people shake my hand at real church. I actually had an opportunity to pull money out of my wallet and put it in the offering plate. I had an opportunity, well, so you see my point. There's nothing like being in church. We do all these other things for people who can't be. We don't do them for people who can. But some of them do not come to church and do the lazy thing. So anyway, bad habits, easy to get into. Good habits, just try walking an extra mile in your exercise. And I learned that with my exercise room in the basement. Every once in a while, you have to intentionally take it up a notch. Add an extra weight to the whole process. And it is so unnatural and uncomfortable, and I don't like it. But 2 or 3 weeks later, I kind of like what it does to me. Judy loves it even more. Okay, we're gonna have to stop there. It's 8 o'clock.